Tom stood at the entrance of the Galactic Academy of Physical Sciences, his heart beating faster than usual. The massive crystal dome above him sparkled with the light of 3 different suns, creating rainbow patterns that danced across the polished floor. He was the first human to ever step foot in this prestigious institution, and he could feel the weight of that responsibility on his shoulders. The orientation hall was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Some floated gently in the air, their translucent bodies rippling like curtains in a gentle breeze. Others moved on multiple legs that seemed too delicate to support even their small frames. A group of what looked like glowing clouds drifted by, their whispered conversations sounding like wind chimes in a soft breeze. "Welcome to Gay Peace," said a melodious voice behind him. Tom turned to see Professor Reed, his new advisor. The professor's feathered body was suspended in a personal anti-gravity field, his 4 wings neatly folded against his sides. "I trust you've adjusted your gravity stabilizer correctly." Tom nodded, tapping the small device on his belt. The school's standard gravity was set to 0.3 g, comfortable for most species, but unnaturally light for a human from Earth. Without the stabilizer, a simple step could send him crashing into the ceiling. Good, Professor Reed chirped, his head tilting at an angle that reminded Tom of curious birds back home. "We've made special arrangements for your unique physical requirements." As they walked through the hall, conversations stopped and heads turned. A group of crystalline beings shifted their transparent bodies away, creating a wider path. Tom tried not to take it personally. He knew he must look as strange to them as they did to him. "Is it true?" a small voice asked from somewhere near the floor. Tom looked down to see what appeared to be a living puddle of silver mercury, its surface rippling with curiosity. "Are you really from a Deathworld?" Before Tom could answer, Professor Reed intervened. Now, let's not use that term. Earth is simply a high-gravity planet with diverse environmental conditions." The living puddle, who introduced itself as Ripple, formed a small tendril that waved excitedly. "But I heard humans can survive impacts that would shatter most species, and they can lift many times their own weight, and they have an internal skeleton made of calcium deposits." Other students had gathered around now, their curiosity overtaking their initial fear. A floating jellyfish-like creature drifted closer, its bell pulsing with bioluminescent patterns of blue and green. "I'm gray," it said, its translator converting the patterns into words. "We're going to be roommates. I hope you don't mind that I requested to be paired with you. I find Earth species fascinating." Tom smiled, relieved to find at least one being who seemed genuinely interested rather than frightened. "Not at all. I'd love to learn about your world too." The conversation was interrupted by a loud chime that resonated through the hall. "Ah," Professor Reed said, his feathers ruffling slightly. "Time for your physical assessment. Are you ready?" Tom nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure what to expect. The other students whispered among themselves as he followed Professor Reed toward the assessment chamber. He could hear snippets of their conversations. "Watch out for its dense muscle structure. I heard they can survive in temperatures that would boil most species. Do you think it's true they can heal from broken bones?" As the doors to the assessment chamber slid open with a soft hiss, Tom took a deep breath. The room was filled with equipment he didn't recognize, presumably designed to test the physical capabilities of various species. This was his chance to show that humans could be more than just the scary Deathworlders everyone thought they were. Professor Reed gestured to a circular platform in the center of the room. "Shall we begin?" The assessment chamber hummed with energy as Tom stepped onto the circular platform. A soft blue light scanned his body from head to toe, and holographic numbers appeared in the air around him. Professor Reed's feathers rippled with what Tom guessed was surprise. "Interesting," the professor said, floating closer to examine the readings. "Your bone density alone is concerning. And these muscle fiber readings." He trailed off, making quick notes on his floating tablet. A small crowd had gathered at the observation window. Tom could see Gray's jellyfish form pulsing with excited colors, while other students pressed against the transparent barrier to watch. Even the crystalline beings who had avoided him earlier were there, their faceted bodies refracting the room's light. "Let's start with something simple," Professor Reed said. "Please jump as high as you comfortably can." Tom nodded, bending his knees slightly. He jumped, using only about half his strength. The room erupted in gasps and frightened chirps as he rose nearly 2 meters off the ground. Several floating students instinctively moved higher toward the ceiling. By the cosmic winds, Professor Reed's wings fluttered in agitation. "Please, a bit more. Gentle next time. Now, can you show us your running speed? Just once around the track." The circular platform expanded, creating a running track around the room's perimeter. Tom started at a light jog, but even this caused concern. His feet made solid thumping sounds against the track, and the impact sensors were flashing yellow with each step. "Those impact forces," a new voice said. Tom turned to see the school's head administrator, Dr. Vale, entering the chamber. The administrator's body was a complex arrangement of geometric shapes that shifted and reformed as they moved. "They exceed our safety parameters." Tom slowed to a stop, trying not to feel discouraged. "I was only jogging," he explained. "I can move much more carefully." "That's precisely our concern," Dr. Vale said, their shapes forming a pattern Tom assumed meant worry. "Your species' natural movements qualify as extreme athletics by our standards. Even your resting metabolic rate produces enough heat to harm some of our students." Professor Reed intervened, his feathers smoothing in what seemed like a calming gesture. "Perhaps we could test your fine motor control. Something less dynamic." They gave Tom a delicate crystal sphere, asking him to move it between several floating points of light. He concentrated hard, moving as gently as he could, but his naturally firm grip caused tiny stress patterns to appear in the sphere. "Remarkable control for a high-gravity species," Professor Reed noted, "but still potentially dangerous for interactive exercises." The assessment continued with more tests, each one revealing the vast gulf between human physical capabilities and the delicate nature of his fellow students. Tom's heart sank with each concerned murmur and frightened twitch from the observers. But then he noticed something changing in the crowd. Gray had moved closer to the window, its bioluminescent patterns showing what Tom had learned was curiosity rather than fear. A few other students were mimicking his movements on their own, testing their strength against the recorded metrics. "Look at its thermal regulation," one student whispered excitedly. "It's not even overheating from the exertion." "The muscle control is fascinating," another added. "It can moderate its strength." Dr. Vale and Professor Reed were deep in discussion, their voices too low for Tom to hear. Finally, they turned to him. "We need to make some adjustments to accommodate your unique capabilities," Dr. Vale said. "Professor Reed has suggested a solution. We'd like to fit you with a gravity modification device. It will help level the playing field, so to speak." Tom nodded, relief washing over him. They weren't going to send him home. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this work," he said firmly. Professor Reed's feathers rippled with what might have been approval. "Then let's begin the modifications. Class starts tomorrow." Tom stared at the sleek device strapped to his chest. It looked like a silver spider with its legs wrapped around his torso, each point glowing with a soft blue light. The school's engineering team had worked through the night to modify a standard gravity enhancer for human use. "Now remember," Professor Reed said, hovering nearby, "this will increase the gravitational force on your body to match our safety standards. It might feel uncomfortable at first." Tom nodded, bracing himself. Dr. Vale pressed a floating control panel, and the device hummed to life. Immediately, Tom felt as if someone had dropped a heavy blanket over his entire body. His knees buckled slightly before he adjusted his stance. "Are you all right?" Gray asked, its jellyfish form pulsing with concerned purple lights. As Tom's roommate, it had insisted on being present for the first test. "Yeah," Tom managed, taking a careful step. "It's like wearing a suit made of lead. But I can handle it." He tried to smile, though it took more effort than usual. The first class of the day was Introduction to Multi-Species Movement. The gymnasium was filled with obstacles and equipment designed for various alien physiologies. Tom watched as his classmates demonstrated their natural abilities, some floating gracefully through anti-gravity zones, others stretching their bodies into impossible shapes. "Your turn, Earth student," the instructor called. "Please traverse the basic obstacle course." Tom approached what looked like a simple set of platforms. Before, he could have easily jumped from one to another. Now, with the gravity enhancer active, even lifting his foot felt like a challenge. He made it to the first platform, his movements slow and careful. Sweat beaded on his forehead from the effort. The second jump was harder. He barely made it, landing awkwardly and having to catch himself with his hands. "Fascinating adaptation," a crystalline student whispered to their friend. "It's actually moving like a normal person now." Tom tried not to let the comment bother him. He focused on completing the course, though each movement felt like he was swimming through thick syrup. By the end, his muscles were trembling from the effort. "Well done," Professor Reed said, making notes on his tablet, "though perhaps we should adjust the settings slightly." The next class was even more challenging. They were learning a popular alien sport called light dance, where players had to move through patterns of floating light orbs without disrupting their delicate energy fields. The other students moved with ethereal grace, their bodies flowing like water through the course. Tom, however, struggled with every step. The gravity enhancer made his movements heavy and clumsy. He bumped into 3 light orbs in his first attempt, causing them to flicker and die. "Maybe we should sit this one out," Gray suggested kindly, noticing Tom's frustration. "We could practice in our room later." But Tom shook his head. "I need to learn this," he said, stepping back into the starting position. This time, he moved even more slowly, treating each step like a deliberate dance move. He made it through half the course before clipping another orb. During lunch break, Tom sat with Gray in the dining hall, watching other students effortlessly float and glide around them. The gravity enhancer made even lifting his food to his mouth feel like a workout. "You're doing better than you think," Gray said, its patterns shifting to encouraging shades of green. "Remember how scared everyone was yesterday? Now they're actually sitting near you in class." Tom looked around and realized Gray was right. While some students still kept their distance, others had gradually moved closer to their table. A few were even watching him with obvious curiosity rather than fear. "I just wish," Tom started, then paused as the gravity enhancer gave a small beep and adjusted itself. "I wish I could find a middle ground, something between terrifying Deathworlder and barely able to move." Gray's lights pulsed thoughtfully. "Maybe that's exactly what you need to find, not just adapting to our way of moving, but finding a new way that works for everyone." It happened during the 3rd week of classes. Tom was slowly getting used to the gravity enhancer, though his movements were still awkward and heavy. He sat in advanced species relations class, trying to take notes while managing the constant pressure on his body. Today's topic, the instructor announced, is adaptation versus natural ability in competitive sports. A crystalline student named Blue stood up, their faceted body catching the light. "Speaking of which, why are we pretending this is working?" They pointed at Tom. "We're changing our whole system just to accommodate a Deathworlder." The room went quiet. Even the floating gas-based students stopped their gentle drifting to watch. "Blue," the instructor warned, "we've discussed appropriate terminology." "No," Blue continued, their crystal segments clicking in agitation. "Look at him. Even with the gravity enhancer, he could still crush any of us by accident. One malfunction, and we're all in danger. My parent cluster sits on the Safety Council, and they say humans are classified as extreme risk species." Tom felt his face grow hot, but he kept his voice calm. "I've been following all the safety protocols." "That's not the point." Blue's crystalline form flashed with bright colors. "You don't belong here. This is a school for civilized species, not walking natural disasters." Gray drifted between them, its jellyfish form pulsing with angry red lights. That's enough. Tom has worked harder than anyone to adapt to our needs. Other students began taking sides. Some moved away from Tom, while others drifted closer in support. The instructor's attempts to restore order were drowned out by the growing argument. Have you seen the videos from Earth? Blue demanded. They have sports where they deliberately crash into each other. They climb mountains without anti-gravity aids. They swim in liquid water. That's what makes it interesting. Another student called out, a small floating cloud of gas named Wisp. We could learn from that kind of adaptability. Tom stood up slowly, the gravity enhancer whirring with his movement. I understand your concerns, Blue. Really, I do. But I'm not here to threaten anyone. I'm here to learn, just like you. Prove it then, Blue challenged, their crystal body now glowing with a fierce light. Prove you can compete without being a danger, or are you afraid to show your true nature? Professor Reed chose that moment to enter the classroom, his feathers ruffling at the tense atmosphere. What's going on here? Before anyone could answer, Blue made a dramatic gesture. Their crystalline arm extended, knocking over Tom's desk. Tom's enhanced reflexes, even slowed by the gravity device, let him catch his tablet before it hit the ground. See, Blue exclaimed. Even restricted, their reactions are unnaturally fast. But Professor Reed had been watching carefully. Interesting, he said, his head tilting thoughtfully. Tom, you caught that device without damaging it, even under enhanced gravity. That shows remarkable control. The professor turned to address the whole class. Perhaps we're approaching this wrong. Instead of trying to completely suppress Tom's abilities, we should focus on control and understanding. In fact, his feathers rippled with excitement. This gives me an idea. What kind of idea? Gray asked, its colors shifting to curious blues. A competition, Professor Reed announced. But not our usual type. We'll create new events that challenge everyone equally. Each species will have to adapt to others' natural environments. Show that strength isn't just about physical power. Tom looked at Blue, whose crystalline form had dimmed slightly. Would you be willing to try that? To really see what each of us can do? The room was silent as Blue considered. Finally, their voice came, slightly less hostile. Fine. But I want to help set the rules, to ensure everyone's safety. Agreed, Tom said, carefully extending his hand in what he hoped was a universal gesture of agreement. Blue hesitated, then extended a crystalline appendage. This doesn't mean I trust you. Yet. Professor Reed's feathers rippled with satisfaction. Then it's settled. We'll begin preparations tomorrow. The Academy's main gymnasium had been transformed. Different zones now simulated various planetary conditions, from low-gravity chambers to high-density atmospheres. Tom stood with Gray, watching students practice in each area. Okay, Tom said, adjusting his gravity enhancer. Show me again how the light dance is supposed to work. Gray's jellyfish form gracefully weaved through a series of glowing orbs, its body pulsing with educational patterns. The key is to feel the energy fields. Don't fight them. Flow with them. Tom took a deep breath and tried again. This time, instead of forcing his way through, he moved more slowly, paying attention to how the orb's energy made his skin tingle. He made it halfway through before clipping one. Much better. Gray's colors flashed excitedly. You're learning to sense the fields. Across the room, Blue was struggling with their own challenge. Tom had designed an obstacle course based on simplified Parker movements. The crystalline being kept freezing at the small jumps, their natural fear of impact holding them back. May I? Tom asked, approaching carefully. Blue's crystal segments clinked nervously, but they nodded. The trick isn't to avoid impact completely, Tom explained. It's about controlling how you land. Try shifting your crystal matrix to spread the force, like this. He demonstrated with a small hop, showing how to roll the impact from heel to toe. Blue watched intently, then tried. Their crystalline form shimmered as they made a small jump, landing with less clatter than before. That wasn't terrible. In another corner, Wisp the gas cloud was teaching a group about atmospheric navigation. Tom joined them, learning how to read air currents and thermal patterns. Even with the gravity enhancer weighing him down, he found it fascinating to understand how different species moved. Humans actually use similar principles in their flying machines, Tom explained to the group. We call it aerodynamics. Professor Reed flew between the practice areas, making notes and offering suggestions. Excellent progress, he said, landing near Tom. But remember, the competition isn't just about physical adaptation. It's about understanding each other's limitations and strengths. The professor was right. As the days passed, Tom noticed something changing. Students weren't just learning new movements, they were learning about each other. The crystalline beings discovered they could use their reflective surfaces to help the gas cloud species navigate. The floating jellyfish forms found ways to create current patterns that helped solid species move more efficiently. Even blues seemed to be softening their attitude. During one practice session, they helped Tom understand how to read crystal resonance patterns, while Tom taught them about momentum control. I still think you're dangerous, Blue said afterward, but their tone was less harsh. But perhaps that's not entirely a bad thing, when used carefully. Gray organized study groups where students could share their biological knowledge. Tom learned about crystal growth patterns, gas diffusion rates, and bioluminescent communication. In return, he explained human concepts like endurance running and temperature regulation. It's fascinating, one gas cloud student commented during a session. Each species' perceived weaknesses led to unique adaptations. Even high gravity produced interesting solutions. The gravity enhancer was still challenging, but Tom was learning to work with it rather than against it. He discovered that some movements actually worked better under increased gravity, especially when combined with techniques he learned from other species. Look at this, he called to Gray one day, demonstrating how he could use the enhanced weight to create beneficial current patterns for the floating species. The same force that makes it hard for me to move can help you move better. Professor Reed watched all of this with obvious approval. This is exactly what we hoped for, he told Tom privately. Not just tolerance of differences, but true understanding and cooperation. As the competition drew closer, the gym buzzed with activity and excitement. Students who once stayed far apart now worked together, combining their unique abilities in creative ways. Tom still had a lot to learn, but for the first time, he felt like he truly belonged at the academy. The day of the competition arrived with all three sons of the system aligned in a rare display. The academy's main arena was packed with students, teachers, and even some members of the Galactic Education Board who had come to witness this unique event. Remember, Professor Reed addressed the competitors, his feathers gleaming under the triple sunlight. This isn't about winning. It's about showing how different species can adapt and work together. The first event was the multi-environmental relay. Teams had to pass a special energy orb through 4 different zones: low gravity, high density, crystal maze, and atmospheric current course. Tom watched as Gray gracefully started their team's run, carrying the orb through swirling air currents. When his turn came, Tom moved carefully through the crystal maze, his gravity enhancer humming with each step. The training paid off. He weaved between the sharp crystal formations without touching them, something that would have been impossible 3 weeks ago. Excellent control, Blue called out from their team's station, their crystal form glinting with what Tom had learned to recognize as approval. The second event was adaptive athletics, where competitors had to complete tasks designed for species completely different from their own. Tom demonstrated how to safely handle crystal-based equipment, while Blue surprised everyone by successfully navigating a simplified version of human climbing challenges. Third event, cooperative constructions, announced the head judge. Teams had to build stable structures using their combined abilities. Tom's team created an impressive display where his controlled strength supported a delicate crystal framework, while Gray's currents kept gas-form students in stable patterns around it. Everything was going well until the final event, the Zero-G Zone Challenge. Tom stepped into the zero-gravity chamber, his enhancer automatically adjusting to the new conditions. He had just begun his movement sequence when a warning light flashed on his chest device. "Warning. Gravity calibration error," a mechanical voice announced. The enhancer's lights flickered erratically. "Tom, get out of there," Professor Reed called, but it was too late. The device surged, then failed completely. Without the artificial gravity holding him back, Tom's natural strength returned instantly. A gasp went through the crowd as he started floating uncontrolled. Nearby, a young gas-form student named Wisp was practicing their routine, unaware of the danger. Tom's trajectory was heading straight toward them. In that split second, Tom had to make a choice, using his newly learned control over momentum. He twisted his body and pushed off a nearby wall. The force sent him away from Wisp, but straight toward a cluster of crystal formations. "No," Blue shouted, moving to help but too far away to reach him in time. Tom remembered his training. Instead of fighting the zero gravity, he used it, just as Gray had taught him. He spread his arms and legs, creating drag like the gas form students did. Then, borrowing from Blue's crystal form techniques, he prepared his body to absorb impact across a wider surface area. He hit the crystal formation with controlled force, dispersing the energy just enough to avoid both hurting himself and shattering the crystals. When he finally came to a stop, the entire arena was silent. Then Wisp floated over. "You deliberately missed me," they said, their gaseous forms swirling with understanding. "You risked yourself to avoid harming someone else." Blue's crystal form clinked as they moved closer. I was wrong about you," they admitted. "True danger comes from lack of control, not from strength itself. You showed more control in failing safety equipment than most of us do in normal conditions." Professor Reed flew to the center of the arena. "This," he announced, "is exactly what we aim to teach. It's not about suppressing our natural abilities, but about understanding and respecting each other's differences." The crowd erupted in cheers. Students of all species crowded around Tom, no longer afraid but curious and excited. As Gray helped him out of the zero-gravity chamber, Tom noticed something important. Not a single student flinched when his gravity enhancer sparked and finally went dark. 1 month after the competition, the Galactic Academy of Physical Sciences looked very different. Tom stood in the newly redesigned main hall, watching students of all species moving together through the spaces specifically designed for their unique abilities. The gravity enhancer on his chest was smaller now, a new model developed with input from both the engineering department and the students themselves. It could be adjusted instantly for different activities, allowing Tom to switch between full strength and controlled movement as needed. "Ready for your presentation?" Gray asked, floating beside him. Its jellyfish form glowed with encouraging patterns of blue and green. Tom nodded, looking at the crowd gathering in the assembly hall. The Galactic Education Board had returned, this time to evaluate the Academy's new adaptive physical education program. Students from other schools were there too, including several from what had once been classified as extreme environment worlds. "I still can't believe they're changing the whole curriculum," Blue said, their crystalline form shimmering as they joined Tom and Gray. In the past month, the three had become an unlikely but effective team. Professor Reed called for attention, his feathers neat and formal for the occasion. "Welcome, everyone. Today, we demonstrate how understanding our differences makes us stronger. Our student representatives will show you what we've learned." Tom stepped forward with his friends. They had practiced this demonstration for weeks. It started with Blue creating a complex crystal structure, its delicate spires reaching toward the ceiling. Then Gray generated current patterns through the formation, creating a beautiful display of light and motion. Finally, Tom's part came. With careful control, he moved through the crystal structure, using his strength not to power through, but to create subtle vibrations that made the whole thing sing with harmonic tones. The audience watched in amazement as three completely different species created something that would have been impossible for any one of them alone. "This is just one example," Tom explained to the crowd. We've learned that what makes us different also makes us valuable. A human's strength isn't just for lifting heavy things. It can be used for fine control and support. A crystal being's fragility isn't weakness. It's perfect for creating precision structures. A gas form's lack of solid shape isn't a limitation. It's freedom to explore new spaces. The board members nodded approvingly as more students demonstrated their combined abilities. A group of gas form students created air currents that helped crystalline beings move more freely. Crystal students designed structures that focused light in ways that helped jellyfish forms communicate better. Everyone had found ways to turn their natural abilities into advantages for others. Starting next term, Professor Reed announced, "We will welcome students from 12 new species previously classified as incompatible with standard education environments. Each will bring their own challenges and their own gifts." Tom saw several of these new students in the audience. There was a student from a high-pressure gas giant, another from a low-gravity asteroid belt, and even one from a liquid methane world. They watched with hope as the demonstration showed how they too could find their place here. But most importantly, Tom concluded, "We've learned that Deathworlder was never the right term. Every world produces exactly the abilities its inhabitants need. Our job isn't to suppress these abilities, but to understand how they can benefit everyone." After the presentation, as students and officials mingled, Blue approached Tom with an unexpected request. "Would you help me design some new training programs for the incoming high-gravity students? I think my crystal resonance techniques combined with your strength control could create something really effective." Tom smiled, remembering how far they'd come from Blue's initial fear and hostility. "Of course, and maybe you could help me refine my crystal handling skills." Gray pulsed with happy colors between them. "We should start an interspecies advisory board. Help new students learn what we learned." As the three friends discussed their plans, Professor Reed watched from above, his feathers rippling with satisfaction. The academy had changed forever, and for the better. What had started as a challenge of accepting one human student had transformed into a whole new way of thinking about physical education in the galaxy. And it had all started because they dared to let a Deathworlder join gym class.